Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 133. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday, Steelers Nation. Hopefully everyone had a great and safe Mother's Day weekend, Dave. Steelers wrapping up their 3-day rookie minicamp, so first time to get the team, at least the rookies and some select players, back on the field with OTAs later this month. Have schedule release week starting really today. That some games were teased, and throughout the week the big drop will come on Wednesday. So a lot on the horizon and a couple things to talk about in the rear view mirror. Dave, how you doing?
Happy Monday. Let's see. Yeah, a lot going on this week with the schedule drop, and we should learn the opponent and the week and the time and date for the Steelers game in Ireland first thing on Tuesday morning. I guess a lot of speculation, more ramping up now that it might not be the Packers and it might be the Vikings, but at least now at this point, we'll get an answer on that, I think, Tuesday morning first thing, so we'll make sure to pass that along to the folks. Rookie minicamp obviously wrapping up over the weekend. We got a Omar press conference to talk about, and a few takeaways from the rookie minicamp, and some draft pick signings, and a couple of tryout players look like they're going to be announced as signing to the team probably later today or by tomorrow at the latest as well, too. So where would you like to start on this Monday?
Dave, let's start with those rookie draft pick signings, and a flurry of them came Friday during the team's first day of rookie minicamp. Every single draft pick except for first-rounder Derrick Harmon has signed, so 6 of the 7 are officially inked. Caleb Johnson, Jack Sawyer, Y.A. Black, Will Howard, Carson Bruner, Dante Kent. And so Harmon, no surprise, he's the last one. That'll get done. I know Emeka Buka at 19 has already gotten his deal signed. Several other first-rounders have put ink to paper, so I'm sure Harmon will soon as well. But Dave, it's nice to get those guys, mostly taken care of.
Yeah, I'd like to apologize for being wrong. I predicted, I think, 5 of the 7 to sign over the weekend, so I was off by 1. Look, was this overly surprising that a handful of them got signed? No. You usually see at least kind of those 4th round or later guys get signed. Generally in that during that rookie mini camp, and then depending on situations where other guys draft. I thought there was a pretty decent chance that Caleb Johnson might sign. He ended up signing, and obviously with no 2nd round pick this year and having to deal with maybe the potential cutoff of guaranteed money beyond definitely beyond the first year, but or maybe at least the first year, and how much fully guaranteed of the full contract. Blah, blah, blah. You don't have that to worry about this year with the Steelers, but Caleb Johnson's done. That leaves Derrick Harmon. I imagine, Alex, that there's not going to be too much of a holdup on Derrick Harmon here, because the only thing I can imagine that there would be any negotiation about at this point, because it's going to be a fully guaranteed 4-year deal with him being a first rounder, is just maybe what the time frame of the signing bonus payout might be. That generally is really the only holdup in these things. I think slowly he's getting boxed in. You mentioned Abuka. I believe both of the Atlanta Falcons players, one before and one, a handful of picks after Derrick Harmon, have now both been signed. So this is going to come together pretty quick. I believe last year, when was I think it was a little bit later in the offseason before Troy Fautanu signed, but I would imagine that Derrick Harmon will get done well before Troy Fautanu got done last year there. So it's good to have all these guys under contract once again. Not surprising, and now we'll wait for the Harmon news to break whenever that happens.
That was June 3rd when Fautanu signed his deal. I have a good feeling Harmon will get done even before then.
I think so. I got a good feeling as well.
day, Pittsburgh entered the rookie minicamp with a couple of open spots on their 91-man roster. And I say 91 because Julius Welshop is the international exemption that allows them to carry an additional player beyond the usual max of 90. And reportedly have signed at least a couple of tryout invite players who participated in rookie minicamp, according to Jordan Schultz. Veteran running back Trey Sermon will be signing a one-year deal with the Steelers, a former draft pick of the 49ers, and for Steeler fans, best known for running all over Pittsburgh in that, 2023 game where he ran for a career-high 88 yards as Pittsburgh could not stop the run in that game. So Sermon in camp impressed and will add to backfield depth along with, of course, Jalen Warren, rookie Caleb Johnson, Kenneth Gainwell, Cordell Patterson is still on roster for now. Anyway, also some other reserve future contract players like Aaron Shamplin and Jonathan Ward and Evan Hull.
Yeah. Hey, you could do worse for a addition to the running back room at this point. Guy that they know obviously a little bit about during his time at Ohio State. And I think I might have mocked him to the Steelers once or twice, I don't know, a couple of years ago. But obviously was looking for work, was not re-signed as an unrestricted free agent this past offseason by the Colts, I think. And look, he comes in, I would imagine this is a minimum value contract, probably a veteran benefit contract, because I believe he's got 4 credited seasons. I would be surprised if there's any guaranteed money. If there is any guaranteed money at all, it'd be $167,500 at the most, but I would be surprised if it's even that. He came in on a tryout basis looking for work, probably wanted to take the first offer that came his way, and so there you go. You got another running back added to the room, and one with some NFL experience at that.
I will retroactively give you 1/11th credit to whatever mock draft that was, Dave,
All right.
for getting that one. So we're still tallying our way. Another player reportedly signed. Well, I shouldn't say reportedly. We broke the story. I'm just used to instinctively saying reportedly. But Gareth Warren, an undrafted rookie free agent, also in on a tryout at a FCS Lindenwood, big offensive tackle, the Hawaiian Gareth Warren, as Steelers Depot reported, is signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. His school also announced that if you needed additional confirmation. So Pittsburgh's tackle depth was not in a great spot. They've had Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, Calvin Anderson, Dylan Cook, but that was it. So not a big shock to see Pittsburgh add some offensive line depth, and Gareth Warren is that guy.
He's one of the ones that we obviously mentioned in the show the other day, maybe a potential guy to come out of the tryouts as a guy that this team could potentially sign. You've been all over him. The crew's been all over him through the draft season. I believe we had a draft profile up on him, right?
Yeah, from Tommy, did a great job during our small school week. It's why we love small school week, and we've been on Gareth Warren for longer than most.
All right, so we'll excited for you to get eyes on him once training camp gets underway, and obviously when we get into the preseason and all, there's not a lot of traffic ahead of him for the most part. So there's a little reason to be optimistic with him, right?
Yeah, he's got size, athleticism. He played guard and tackle at Lindenwood, but finished last year at tackle. I imagine Pittsburgh will be trying to use him there. We've also gotten some questions about Thomas Perry, who we talked about a lot during Friday's show, rookie minicamp invite out of Middlebury, who caught a lot of attention during the Shrine Bowl. I have not heard word on whether or not Perry is signed or not. Typically, no news means he's not being signed, but sometimes Pittsburgh will circle back to these guys a couple days later. Remember, Jonathan Ward was in rookie minicamp last year as a veteran tryout player. Took him a couple days to officially catch his contract. So I think Pittsburgh may have maybe one open roster spot right now. I didn't check the math on that day. Maybe you can, but we'll see if any others come in. But reportedly Sermon, and then as we reported, Gareth Warren signing as well.
I think, and because the NFLPA is still behind on the reporting of, because the Steelers did finally officially announce the signing of the 8 undrafted free agents over the weekend, along with the 6 of the 7 draft picks. I believe with the 2, if you add Sermon and Gareth, that should put us at, let's see, I believe they've already accounted for George Pickens going away, traded. I know they've already accounted for Robert Woods' addition. If I was to add 8 to this, 2 more, would make 10. It should put them at 90, Alex, assuming these get announced by the Steelers with Sermon and Gareth today.
Which means they have one open roster spot, which of course could be earmarked for one Aaron Rodgers, but we'll see if any other moves get made. One move that did get made around the AFC North, Dave, that was indirectly Steelers related, DeMonte Casey reportedly signing with the Cleveland Browns. And so kind of a safety swap this offseason, Dave. Juan Thornhill, formerly of the Browns, comes to Pittsburgh, and Casey from Pittsburgh to Cleveland. So that news coming in Monday morning.
Browns are excited to swap Thornhill for Casey, and Steelers fans seem to be excited to swap Thornhill for Casey. According to what's all going on Twitter the last, I don't know, few hour or so or whatnot. But yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out for both teams there. I believe that leaves two of the Steelers undrafted free agents. Or not undrafted, unrestricted free agents from the offseason not signed. Tyler Matakevich, Cameron Sutton. Am I forgetting one?
We got Michael Pruitt, Cam Sutton,
Pruitt.
Tyler Matakevich, and if you count him, CJ Henderson as well.
Yeah, I think he had ended, though, on the practice squad injured reserve, though, so I don't think he technically qualifies for that. But, I mean, if you want to paint a bigger picture, yeah, you could add him to that list. So, all right. About the undrafted free agents with their signings being made official and all, we should start learning. It hasn't hit the NFLPA sheet as far as their signing bonuses go. I would imagine maybe first thing in the morning we'll start getting confirmation about what all those signing bonuses are, and then I can provide a full cap update. Because I'd imagine we'll have the which are estimated but assumed to be correct signing bonus amounts for the 6 of the 7 draft picks as well too. So it's all within by the end of this week we should have a updated sense of where this team is cap wise as we await news on maybe one Aaron Rodgers.
Always at least a little interesting to see what the UDFA's got. It sounds like the largest signing bonus, the one that has been reported, was for DJ Thomas Jones, the tight end / fullback out of South Alabama, got $30K. That was reported right after the draft at the time of reported signing. So that's a guy that Pittsburgh may really take a look at. They don't need a fullback, but Arthur Smith's offenses have typically carried a fullback, and they didn't have one last year. Thomas Jones is not a true fullback. He played kind of a H-back wing at South Alabama last year, but has the size and lead blocking ability. Some nice tape out there, so that's a guy to keep an eye on.
And then obviously you had Michael Pruitt on the roster last year, so potentially, still a spot, maybe depending on what they carry, fullback / tight end wise, for one of these undrafted guys to make it.
Absolutely. All right, Dave, let's talk about Omar Khan. We heard from some of the players this weekend, but maybe the most notable comments of anyone in the organization who spoke during rookie minicamp was from Omar Khan, who held kind of an impromptu press conference. Typically, you don't hear from the GM during this time of year, but on the heels of the George Pickens trade, Khan addressing the media. And, I generally regard Omar Khan as very bland with the media, very buttoned up, not going to tell you much. And that's probably the smart and right thing to do. But he was as transparent as I've heard him be basically in his tenure as Steelers GM since May of 2022. So a lot of commentary, called it a fresh start for Pittsburgh and for Pickens. What are your thoughts on what Omar Khan had to say, Dave?
Let's roll back to some of these comments, specifically when it comes to Pickens. Yeah, long story short, he says it was in the best interest of both parties to make this deal. Let me see if I can pull up the proper quotes here. Let's go with Omar Khan on the George Pickens trade. We just kind of talked about it, lots of serious conversation, honest conversations, and we just felt that a fresh start for both sides was the right thing. We had some people inquire during the draft, nothing that really made sense. The Cowboys reached out earlier this week, and they proposed something for us to think about. Let's see, what else? Related. It sounded like they had some sort of conversations, maybe with his agent, David Mwaga. I guess kind of prior to that. And, I don't know if that was in regards to, maybe the potential of extending him and what that would look like. But in short, well, he was also asked about ahead of the draft being excited to have Pickens and Metcalf for 2025 and what had changed since then. He says, yeah, it's just, I guess we had a team that called and gave us something that was worth thinking about. And we had conversations. And like I said, we talked about where we've been, where we could be, and it just made sense that a fresh start was a good idea. And I thought somewhere else in here, it sort of alluded to, maybe, contract talks with the agent and all like that. But what are some of your takeaways in regard to what he had to say about the Pickens deal?
Well, on that answer of what happened to your comments post draft about being excited about having Pickens and Metcalf, the answer to that, truthfully, is I'm not telling you I'm trading this guy until I'm trading this guy. I'm not going to weaken my hands. So that's a smart play there from Omar Khan. Didn't that happen with Deontay Johnson? Remember that when we thought he had that slip about Deontay Johnson getting an extension and then he was traded days later? Remember when Khan said that and we thought we caught him, but he caught us? So it's kind of the kiss of death. If Omar Khan says he's excited to have a receiver in Pittsburgh, he may not be long for Pittsburgh ultimately. I mean, my overall takeaway is that I thought Khan, well, he will never explicitly obviously say this, was basically implying and very strongly getting at that we just were kind of done with George Pickens. We were fed up with everything happening behind the scenes, and we know all on the surface about the fines, the penalties, the lateness. I can only imagine what's happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. The team just seemed to be, we're going to move on from this guy. We're just not going to go and deal with it for another year. And that's kind of what Khan was getting at with the fresh start and talking with Pickens and everything. That was, I think Khan made a reference to everything that's happened in the past and kind of where we were at now. It was the right decision to move on. So that was kind of one part of it for me. The other part was, and this has been my whole point of contention, was, okay, trade George Pickens. I get it. I understand it. How do you replace him? And for what it's worth, and you wouldn't expect Khan to really say anything else, but Khan seems very high on the internal replacements. And he very strongly pushed back and said, this is not comparable to last year where it was George Pickens and who else? And now it's DK Metcalf and who else? Khan seems to be very confident with Calvin Austin, with Roman Wilson, even though he is largely sight unseen to us and obviously barely played last year. So the interpretation of his comments taken at face value would indicate this team is not going to be itching to sign or trade for an external option. They're going to roll with what they have. What they have is Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, Robert Woods, etc.
What is that Will Ferrell character? Ron Burgundy? I don't believe you.
So you don't believe Omar Khan?
He says, we wouldn't have done this if we didn't feel good about the receiver situation, about our depth there. I know people make a comparison about last year, but it's not even close to being the same. What is the other meme from the girl from The Office? It's the same picture,
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you look back at, number one wide receiver and the step down from there. And look, once again, I'm not discounting a guy like Calvin Austin. I thought Calvin Austin really had a good season last year, made some development. But in my heart of hearts, and you're right, what else is he going to say? Well, yeah, we traded him and we're unhappy with what we have left right now. We don't feel good at all with our wide receivers situation. He's not going to come out and say that at this point. And yes, I do realize the team added Robert Woods, but that's I don't know if that's a full Band-Aid. That's an off-brand Band-Aid. That's one of those Band-Aids that you buy the off-brand you never heard of, and you go to use one and it just doesn't stick very well, and you end up using 10 of them versus one of them from the Band-Aid brand. But
you got to get you some better medical care, Dave. We gotta work on that.
Yeah. Well, look, I grew up poor. We Band-Aids were a luxury in our house.
All right.
The old man told us to go outside, rub some dirt on it, Well, you ain't going to the emergency room unless you're dying, sort of situation.
You got the Chris Rock Robitussin, just Robitussin for everything.
Yeah,
spiel.
yeah. We actually had castor oil in the house, and so so there you go. My wife's shaking her head.
All right, bring us back.
I don't know. I don't know how they can be as happy as he would like us to believe that he thinks he's happy. But look, time will tell. We talked about this ad nauseum. How this kind of wondered what's the plan, Stan? And he was kind of asked about at some point the potential of adding another wide receiver to the room, and in so many words, he said, there's other, should we decide to go that route? There's other guys out there right now. And even though you and I kind of went through a short list and try to build who they might look at, and he did kind of praise Roman Wilson. Roman Wilson has been here working the past few weeks. We saw him at the end of last season. He doesn't necessarily view George Pickens' time in Pittsburgh as a disappointment. He said, we had 3 years with George and we had some exciting times, a fresh start for both sides. He said fresh start quite a few times throughout this thing. So in other words, we were done with this guy. It's somebody else's turn to take a swing at George Pickens. So, he was asked, let's see, what else along those lines? If there's an opportunity to add a playmaker on offense, regardless of whether it's a receiver or wherever it is, we're going to look into it. And if it makes sense, it makes sense. But there's always good players available. And I mean, that's an interesting question. There's good players out there. If we wanted to add some people, we could, but we feel comfortable with the group. So, look, we talk time and time again, especially coming out of this time of year, not necessarily the rookie minicamp, but the OTAs that are coming up. 6 practices, I think, will end over the course of the next, 3 weeks, I believe. And how many times do we write up the 90-man roster at that time generally isn't the 90-man roster going into the final, say, week of the really cut down days. And how many times have we pointed out specifically guys that are not necessarily in OTAs and maybe specifically even training camp? There's usually time and time again 1 or 2 guys that end up on the initial 53-man roster that were not on either one of those rosters. So it does make sense for this team to at least look and pay attention. And if adding somebody makes sense, particularly at the wide receiver room, they should do that. So I understand he said what he said. I wouldn't imagine him saying it any differently than that. But in the heart of hearts, I can't believe that they won't be actively looking to add to that wide receiver room.
I guess time will tell. I do think Pittsburgh will at the very least go through OTAs later this May, through minicamp in June, and evaluate what they have before probably making any sort of outside additions to really see what Roman Wilson looks like in organized team activities. And Calvin Austin, after his breakout 2024 season, reporting, and it may just be spin that's being sent out to the media, but I know Jeremy Fowler, Jerry Dulac, they've all said this team is truly high on Roman Wilson, believe that he can be the guy and replace those George Pickens snaps. And, they at least got to see him work behind the scenes late last season as he was IR designated to return, was never activated, but they got to see that and got to see him work a little bit this offseason, although it's been very minimal evaluation, I'm sure, not even fully on the field in practices yet. That won't happen until OTAs May 27th. So I guess time will tell. But if Pittsburgh is truly confident in what they have, they better be right. They cannot be wrong about this and have this black hole as a number 2 receiver and have this offense feeling incomplete and 1 wide receiver short, which was the path they went down last year. And that is still my concern. So maybe they're right, but they have to prove it. I don't think they get the benefit of the doubt this time around.
All right. I would agree with that. I thought Mike Florio kind of summed up Omar Khan talking about the fresh start, saying that's a nice way of saying get lost. And in his article, he said, really, what team would want a fresh start from a potentially great player so quickly? A team that has had enough. And that's the long and short of it, I think, when it comes to the Steelers and George Pickens.
Sure. Again, it was never difficult to understand why Pittsburgh was trading George Pickens, that you don't have to twist anyone's arm to understand the reasons for it. The question was about timing and plan and replacement, and those things still, to me, unanswered here post Pickens trade.
All right, so we'll sit and watch what happens and talk about the wide receiver room until it does or does not change by week 1 of the season.
Dave, there was some Pickens news on Sunday, although it is in dispute. So to try to lay out exactly what has happened here, there was some screenshots going around on Twitter that came from Instagram, if you can follow all that social media tunnel, where purportedly Pickens had commented on a post and called the Steelers organization cheap and trashed them pretty good. That comment was apparently deleted. Pickens then came out a couple hours later and denied ever making those comments. So we don't know if that original comment was real or fake. We did not write about the comments initially because we could not independently verify it ourselves. And if we can't independently verify it, see with our own eyes, we do not write about it. And we wrote about the Pickens denial afterwards. So that's kind of the story of Sunday. I don't think we're ever going to find out truthfully 100% one way or the other if that was a true comment from Pickens or not. But that is the story that dominated yesterday.
And normally I'm right there able to capture some of these screenshots of kind of this stuff in real time. Unfortunately, when all that supposedly went down with him commenting on that Instagram post, and then it either being deleted or hidden. It looks like it was deleted. If indeed he did post it, I did not see it with my own eyes. No one on our staff saw it with our own eyes. But doing some sleuthing of putting together some screenshots from other people on Twitter, I am 96% sure he did post that on IG. Once again, I don't have proof. I can't 100% say that he did, but in my honest opinion, for whatever that's worth, I think he did. And then either his agent or he decided, I'm just going to delete that. And then a little while longer, he claims, I did not do that. I was on a plane. You guys need to stop using all this AI stuff and, just trying to smooth it over that way. However, earlier a couple hours earlier, he was posting stuff on his IG about Mother's Day and all. Long story short, Alex, I think he did it. I think he deleted it, and I think he tried to cover it up with an Instagram post later, regardless of whether he did or did not. Whatever camp you want to fall in. If he did indeed make that post, that reply on Instagram and deleted it, shame on him. And that's part of exactly probably what, part of the reason why he's no longer in Pittsburgh. Once again, we don't know for sure if he indeed did do that. Second, if indeed he did call the Steelers cheap and all like that in today's NFL, and for a while now, with the 90% rule when it comes to cash spending versus cap, is there any team that's really cheap in the NFL, Alex? The short answer is no. Teams are required over a 3-year period of the total amount of the salary cap number. They must spend at least 90% of that number in cash. The league wide must show that they spend 95% of that 3-year running total in cash. Teams are not restricted from spending more than 100% of the 3-year total of cap in cash. I think my total from the last 3 years from the Steelers, and I'm going to go back and recheck my math later today, potentially for a post. I believe I had them in the 3-year period ending in 2023 as spending 97%. And we'll see how that aligns up during that span with the other teams. Long story short, the Steelers aren't cheap because they can't be. Rules indicate that they can't be. And I don't think the Steelers are a team that will hover right around the 90% number just so that other teams can make up the difference there. I think they have a cognizant effort, league Steelers wise, to at least be at the 95 to 97% of the number. So if you want to say the Steelers are cheap, that they don't spend 100% of the 3-year cap number in cash, Okay, I'll listen to that. But how many teams around the league actually do spend 100% or more of the cap number in cash? And the answer is probably not many, if any, consistently there. So to call the Steelers cheap, especially on the heels of them paying DK Metcalf what they did, which was kind of unprecedented for an outside player, let alone trading a second round pick for an outside player and then making him a top 5 highest paid player on the team. Really shoots down the notion that the Steelers are cheap. Now, if you want to call the Steelers cheap from the aspect of the guaranteed money beyond year one for players that, and once again, DK Metcalf really essentially shot that down, so to speak, right? With his deal here. If you want to just get into the totality, well, how many players do they really do this with? Okay, but I mean, you've got teams like the Bengals and the Patriots. Packers that still subscribe to that theory as overall. Here's the thing, George Pickens. If indeed George Pickens posted that, they did not warrant him worthy of getting a contract with the team. And that's what it boils down to. Anybody calling the Steelers cheap just does not firmly understand the rules regarding the CBA and cash spending as it relates to cap.
I don't want to get too much into the semantics of it for these comments that we don't even know are genuinely from George Pickens, but I suppose you could sit there and say cheap from the standpoint of not just the salary cap, but just how you spend outside of that, how you run your organization, your facility, pay your coaches, that kind of stuff, right, is probably a better way to view how cheap a team is. When people call the Bengals cheap and Mike Brown a penny pincher, as he's gained the reputation of in seasons past, it was less about a salary cap thing and more about, well, they don't have an indoor practice facility and that kind of stuff. And that's kind of how I view teams who are cheap and not cheap.
If you want to frame it as that, I have no issue. If you want to frame it around facilities and that the NFLPA players report, coaches, and all like that. If you want to add, do you think though, if, and here we are, we're hypotheticaling the hypothetical.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I don't think Pickens was getting at that if that was his actual comment. I don't think he was like doing this hyper deep dive into how many scouts are on staff. You know,
right.
the Bengals have been accused of that. But honestly, and maybe I'm being naive here. I know you talked about last week about your naivete about adding a receiver. I believe Pickens. I don't know. No one's going to know for sure. Maybe it was, but I'll believe Pickens here. There's so much. I don't think it was AI. If anything, it was just some troll that was able to make the account look like his or a screenshot or whatever. But I'll take Pickens at his word and say he did not post that. It's also a little out of character for him to post something like that, a comment. He's done a lot of other social media stuff and, obviously on the field and all the outbursts, but typically hasn't done that kind of stuff. So until I can get concrete proof it was him, which I probably won't, I'll believe him. But either way, it doesn't matter. Whether it was or wasn't his comment, he's no longer a Steeler, and so it's all irrelevant.
Right. And I apologize to him up front if indeed he did not make that reply. But based on the sleuth and I did after the fact and not seeing the original one, I'm like I said, 95, 97% think that he did do that. But it's all, it doesn't matter because he's no longer with the team. It's only newsworthy because it was Mother's Day and it's him and he was recently traded and it's an easy target for the time of year.
Yeah, and I know nobody's going to care about this. I'm going to get on my soapbox here and just kind of talk about some inside baseball stuff. Our site did not write about the initial Pickens comments that went around, and we could have gotten a bunch of clicks and attention for that, and we chose not to because, again, we could not verify that information ourselves. And
now, we would have. We would have if we could have verified it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, as we did with the Pickens Instagram unfollowing the team thing, which we took a lot of heat for. We were able to verify that. So just want to give our process. We did, of course, write about the Pickens response to it because he's now weighing in. We know that he did weigh in on that. But just for clarification's sake, and we get some people think we hate George Pickens. We want to bash George Pickens at every opportunity. And us not writing about that initially, I think is one of many examples of us trying to do the right thing and be fair to every single player. Or my whole goal, Dave, I know your goal is as well for the site, is to be fair to every player. It doesn't mean praise, doesn't mean criticism. When they're warranted for either, we're going to praise, we're going to criticize, but to be fair to the player, that is our mentality. I think we were fair with handling that whole Pickens story.
Right, and that comes out of making mistakes over the years as well too, you know?
Yes, trial and error, and but I think it's a value set for the site too about
Mhm.
being fair, and so not always perfect, but that is our intent, and I think that's how we handle the Pickens situation. All right, Dave, anything else from rookie minicamp weekend? Mike Tomlin spoke very briefly, would not comment really on the Pickens situation, said Omar Khan handled those comments, and Tomlin would, quote, not add any more color to those comments about the Pickens situation. So I was hoping to hear a little more from Tomlin, but I don't think we ever really will on that. Nothing else really notable from Mike Tomlin. Had some, generic praise for Will Howard getting acclimated, but not a whole lot to really dive into there.
Yeah, we got the annual quote of receive and disseminate information in so many words that we get, kind of things that we're looking for, and about individual performances in so many words. He says, I don't know if we're looking at it at that through that lens. You could probably rubber stamp a lot of this going back the last several years when it comes to these rookie mini camps. As far as what players said, I thought, and once again, you know, we didn't, we obviously weren't there to see it, the practices to see technically how players did. I don't think there was probably a lot to discern overall there. I think more than anything, some of the quotes to come out. I enjoyed the Caleb Johnson short bit with the media. Looks super excited for the opportunity to be with the team, willing to do anything that's needed. Openly admitted that needs to work on his pass protection, says he's excited to work with Jalen Warren and going to really be focused on becoming an all-around back. I think he even mentioned he might be involved in some kickoff returns. Did that come out of his mouth? Or at least the potential to be in those lines when it comes to that. So really like the self-awareness of the things that he knows that he has to work on moving forward. So that was one bit that caught my eye. Why y'all black still has no idea what he's going to do as far as nose tackle and those
Or at least
sort of,
won't tell anyone. I think he
yeah.
was a little coy with the media.
Yeah. Derrick Harmon said the shoulder's 100% fine, no issue there. What other takeaways? Jack Sawyer knowing the importance of the outside linebacker position. What else came out of here? I don't think we heard from the last pick from Kent, Dante Kent. Was there anything to come out of his mouth? Did you see?
Not that I saw. No, it was the other selections. Carson Bruner talked about feeling right at home, of course, very familiar with Pittsburgh, growing up around the organization where his father played and is a current area scout for. Yeah, it was the first time we got to really hear from Derrick Harmon since he had that short media phone interview right after the pick, but then did not have the formal press conference that first round picks typically do, of course, because of the death of his mother and attending to all those things. So got to hear from him. Nothing too crazy in terms of obviously what he said. Thanked the organization for, of course, drafting him, but then helping him through a very difficult time. Mother's Day yesterday, he had an Instagram post about how difficult that day was, understandably so. But from a football perspective, was excited to get back into his element and focus on that, and discussed how comfortable he feels in this defense, playing in that odd front at Oregon, that 3-4 front, and a defense with the Ducks that's pretty similar to what he's being asked to do in Pittsburgh. And so I talked about one of the several themes of this year's draft, Dave. One of them is clean projections, trying to make an easier projection for how this guy will adjust from college to our system in Pittsburgh. And you have guys like Derrick Harmon and Jack Sawyer and Will Howard and Caleb Johnson, a lot of clean fits where what they did in college will be pretty similar to what they will do in the NFL. Of course, verbiage is different and the playbook is larger and there's some more nuance to it, I'm sure, but it just kind of helps make that evaluation a little bit easier when you have the guy that's going to do a pretty similar thing and have similar roles and alignments to what they did in college.
I've talked about after the draft and Caleb Johnson, and everybody knows how I feel about the running back position. And I find myself at least more excited because of all the things that I said, the fit that he had in Iowa with Caleb, what he was asked to do, the different zone schemes, the explosive runs. So put me on the bullish Caleb Johnson continue on that. Another byproduct of the rookie minicamp for the Steelers is you get some great photos coming out from the team and get a real good look at these guys not in pads. I just sent you, Alex, a picture of, I think, the three Iowa guys, Castro, Caleb Johnson, and WR Black. Uh, what do you think about Caleb Johnson there in shorts?
You DM'd it to me?
I just DM'd it to you.
I did not get it yet, but whenever I do, I will let you know. But yeah, Pittsburgh loving the Iowa kids.
Oh, I
this
just
year.
sent it there. I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I mean those guys are built. YA Black's what 6'5", 330, and Caleb Johnson is that, like I said, old school size. Actually, in some reader pointed this to my attention. At the combine, Johnson was 224, and guys slimmed down to run fast. And then at his pro day for Caleb Johnson, he got back up to 234. So I don't know what he's weighing in that photo you sent me, but his playing weight seems to be a little more in that 230 range than it was in the low 220s. So yeah, certainly guys who look good getting off the bus.
All right. Well, I sent you that to look at Caleb Johnson. Now, look, we're not going to show up at the carnival as the guess the weight guy, and obviously, does that even look 224?
It does look slimmer. I know we're two men on a podcast ogling at a player, and I'm not good at guessing weights, but he certainly carries it well if he is in that 230 range.
He certainly does. He carries it well, even if that's 224. Kudos to him. That looks more like 215. I don't know. Maybe other people can chime in on that. It's the picture. It's easy to find on the Steelers social media account of Castro, Caleb Johnson, and YR Black. I couldn't help but look at that and say, man, that looks like he needs to eat a steak or two.
Nah, I think he's good probably wherever he's at. But he talked about with reporters that he runs on a treadmill 3-4 miles, I think almost daily. So he's certainly getting in his cardio. My favorite minicamp photo was the one that you had tweeted out, was the team photo they do each year, which is a really cool tradition. And then right in the middle of it was defensive line coach Carl Dunbar, and flanked to him on each side was Derrick Harmon and YA Black. And I think Dunbar was kind of pointing at both guys with a full grin on his face. So talk about one happy man, get you a couple of big defensive linemen, and Carl Dunbar is good to go.
Yeah, it looks like he's very happy of his two new prizes that he got during the draft there, especially coming out of rookie minicamp there. So that caught my eye. You always go to that over the head team photo, and who's Mike Tomlin next to? And I think in this one it's Jack Sawyer. He's close to there as far as draft picks go and all like that. But going to be interesting to watch the progression of Derrick Harmon and YR Black under the tutelage of Carl Dunbar moving forward.
Another theme of the draft was loading up on defensive line, front seven, stopping the run. I know we're far out here and we're all just doing back of the napkin math, Dave, but what are your projections for what Johnson will record this year statistically as a rookie? He'll be in that committee with Jalen Warren. Not entirely sure how it's going to shake out, but what is a good target number in terms of carries, yards, rushing touchdowns for Caleb Johnson in year one?
What is our buddy from Clay? Point me to the post of Clay's projections. Let's play with a couple of those projections and have some fun with it. That might be a good little filler here, being as how you open up the topic there.
Let me pull it up here. Now, his projections are always super conservative because he basically assumes players will miss some time. So he usually does them out of a 15-game data set. So I wish he would just kind of do all 17 games. Let's see.
I've got it pulled up here. He's got for Caleb Johnson 217 carries, 918 yards, 7 touchdowns, 33 receptions. 25 receptions, 181 yards, and 1 touchdown. That's I tell you, for a May post-draft projection, that's hard to work an over-under off of, I think.
And that's over 14 games. If you extrapolate that
Yeah.
out over 17, you're clearing him easily over 1,000. It's a pretty aggressive projection. He has him out rushing Jalen Warren pretty comfortably.
I will say this, and I think I said this kind of after the draft and all, because of the system that he's coming out of at Iowa, uh, because of the expectation of the offensive line hopefully will be a little bit better because of all things involved. I'm bullish on him. I think he's got a good chance at a 1,000-yard rushing season, Alex, and I would not be surprised sooner rather than later that he's like that first, second down back in the offense, and then obviously Jalen Warren either giving him a spell and obviously being the obvious passing down, third down type back because of the pass protection while Caleb Johnson gets up to speed in that area of the game. I think barring injury, I think we'll start to see him more and more on early downs. So at the very least, I could see him hitting the 900-yard rushing mark, and I like I said, I'm probably more bullish than most. I think he's got I think he'll have a serious opportunity hitting 1,000 rushing yards.
So you think he could really replace Najee Harris one-to-one as that early down rusher that becomes the lead runner ahead of Jalen Warren?
I think he could. Yeah, yeah, I do.
He could, certainly, and Arthur Smith potentially could ride the hot hand. I'm a little less, I don't want to say pessimistic, but maybe a little less bullish on that. It may take Johnson some time to assume that role as well. But I think if you were to think about at least 700, 800 yards rushing this year is kind of my first thought, at least when it comes to what Caleb Johnson could record.
Okay. Once again, I'm a little bit more bullish on him than you, obviously.
If he does reach 1,000 yards, he'll be only the third Steelers rookie back to ever do so, joining Franco Harris, who won Rookie of the Year in 1972, the only Steelers running back to win the award, offensively, of course, and Najee Harris, who rushed for 1,200 his first year in Pittsburgh.
All right, and he's got, as you mentioned, 165 attempts for Jalen Warren, 721 yards, 4 touchdowns, 52 receptions, 376 yards, 1 touchdown.
So basically putting him in a similar role as years past, a 1B in the committee and a third down back as indicated by those 52 receptions. So interesting there. And again, those are conservative estimates where he assumes all those guys are playing 14 games if there's time missed for injury.
If you're playing along at home, Mike Clay from ESPN Fantasy has early projection of DK Metcalf, 73 catches, 1,023 yards, 6 touchdowns. Now, this was prior to George Pickens being dealt. He had George Pickens with the Steelers having 69 catches, 989 yards, 6 touchdowns. Let's assume all of his projections are right. How are you replacing the 69, 989, and 6?
Well, his projection, and as you said, important to stress this was pre-Pickens trade. He had Roman Wilson for 3 catches and 36 yards, and Robert Woods for 8 catches and 84 yards. And I think it's probably safe to say those guys, Wilson especially, will be hoping and looking and likely to get a lot more production than those meager numbers he posted.
Lord, I don't know what's going to happen for Roman Wilson in 2025. We'll see what happens with this wide receiver room. But if Roman Wilson has 3 catches for 36 yards, something's gone horribly wrong, regardless of who's in that room.
Means he's hurt again, and you're probably looking at turning the page for 2026. So yeah, there's a lot riding on Roman Wilson and Pittsburgh. If they truly are banking on internal options, they got to get this guy right. And we talked about this, I think, for the Friday show. Still a 3rd-round pick last year. Someone, of course, they were high on. Someone they thought would come in right away, but maybe I shouldn't say come in right away, but could come in and have an impact in some sort of Deontay Johnson type of role as a really good route runner. And so they better hit on Roman Wilson.
All right, and I want to clarify once again, I'm not down on Roman Wilson. It's just there's not enough info out. Look, the fan side of you says, all right, they spent they spent a 3rd-round pick on him. They hope to had get him further along in this thing. Last year, obviously, injury prevented that. But there were still a lot of questions coming out about Roman Wilson. prior to even last season, based on the tape that we saw. He played inside and outside. The biggest question with me regarding him is let's say you're in two wide receiver groupings with him, and he's asked to get releases against, say, press or man on the outside. There's just not a lot of him winning at the college level at Michigan doing so. So that's one of the biggest questions I had about. We saw him do well out of slot and against off coverage and things like that, but there's just not enough information now since he's been drafted of how how he'll develop in that specific phase of his game against press man or man or anything along those lines where he's having to beat a defender as opposed to eating up the cushion.
Right. It felt a little developmental coming out. There was athleticism, there was some playmaking, there was some decent production in a run heavy Michigan offense, but you felt like he had to work on getting stronger, filling out his frame, using his hands better, working on releases, beating press coverage, all those kinds of things. And obviously just never got a chance to do that. As a rookie, getting hurt that first padded practice and then coming back in week 6, playing 5 snaps, no catches, no targets, and then going down with a hamstring injury, coming back to practice late in the season. We just don't know. It's a clean slate, and I want to give him the fair opportunity to show what he can do. And in the very, very tiny window we got into Roman Wilson during the non-padded practices to start camp last year, he made a couple plays. There was one really good twisting sideline catch that he brought down, but it's not a real football environment, and there's still so much more to learn.
What's a good season for him now that Pickens gone? 40 catches?
That's a good question. The number 2 receiver in Arthur Smith offense does not always have tremendous numbers. It has happened occasionally with A.J. Brown, Corey Davis, but probably asking too much for Wilson to assume a Corey Davis type of role out of the gate in year number 2. Yeah, I mean, I haven't picked numbers yet.
Is under 40 discouraging? Will under 40 be discouraging?
Yeah, I mean, probably. It depends on what he does with, say, even 35 catches. How many splash plays can he make? The point is, Omar Khan at the Combine, Dave, talked about the need to add playmakers to this offense, and he was 100% correct about that. And he went out there and added DK Metcalf, which is a big-time playmaker, and hopefully Caleb Johnson can be a bigger playmaker in the run game. But you subtract a big playmaker in George Pickens, and so can you replace those big downfield plays? And that's kind of my focus on what Wilson needs to be able to do. And he wins differently than George Pickens, obviously. It's not going to be making those crazy contested catches the way that Pickens had such an affinity to do, but can you still create big plays? And that's kind of what I'm focused on as much as the actual numbers.
All right. What else coming out of the rookie minicamp? Sounds like a little bit of buzz about Rock Taylor out of Memphis.
Yeah, I didn't hear a whole lot. I think there's an article today in the Post-Gazette or something about that. I haven't gotten a chance to read, but yeah, when Pickens is out the door, it opens up more spots, and it's still a tough path for guys like Rock Taylor, but an intriguing undrafted free agent, no question. So we'll get eyes on him in training camp.
All right. Was there anything else that caught your eye from Khan, Tomlin, any of the other participants in the rookie minicamp?
There was a commentary after day 1 from the Post-Gazette about how comfortable Will Howard looked, and I talked about this was a good weekend for him to kind of show leadership and get assimilated and kind of be the guy until all the veterans show up later this month. And so I know it's a little bit of red meat to throw out there about how good Will Howard looked. And this was a very low-key rookie minicamp. It's a lot of walkthroughs. They're not even in helmets. And so you're not really evaluating how well anyone did. You're just talking more about getting lay of the land. As Tomlin talked about, sending out information, how guys receive it, how they then send it out to their position groups. But sounds like a good start for Will Howard, for whatever that's worth.
All right. Omar Khan was asked if the offseason objective was being to acquire 2026 comp picks. He says, yeah, I'll say, this year we were in a position where how should I say this? It was important for us to acknowledge the fact that we could be in a position to acquire comp picks next year. And I mean, you guys saw how we did things in the offseason. That's obviously something that was on the back of our minds times when we made decisions, and we'll see how it all shakes out. He says, the next phase of this is how much these guys play, meaning the free agents, the unrestricted free agents they lost, how much these guys played to determine where those comp picks end up. But that's something we were obviously cognizant of.
Yeah, no question. It's no secret about how this team is stockpiling picks for 2026. And they have, according, I think, to what our Ross McCorkle wrote, 12 selections if the comp picks all turn out the way it's projected to be, which of course is no guarantee, but good chance to at least get those picks, maybe not the exact round. So 12 selections overall, Dave. I don't know last time Pittsburgh had 12 of those in a draft. If they have at least 5 selections within the first 2 days, which is what they're projected to have, rounds 1 through 3, as I struggle through that. It'll be only the third time they'll have 5 selections within the first 3 rounds in the common draft era. It happened, I'm forgetting the years it happened, but it's happened twice before and not in quite some time. So Pittsburgh could certainly be loaded to either trade up or make a bunch of moves.
I'm going to go out on a huge limb here once again and reiterate that I do not believe the Steelers will make 12 actual selections in the 2026 NFL draft in Pittsburgh.
Probably a safe bet.
All right. So anything else from the weekend as it sits?
That was basically it. Yeah, rookie minicamp. The team will come back and have mostly the whole roster for voluntary OTA starting the 27th. And don't want to spend too much time talking about Aaron Rodgers because we spent a lot of time about him already. But we're getting closer to whatever it's worth, and it's not worth much. The internal deadline that I personally would set for Aaron Rodgers to show up by May 27th and be with his team for OTAs and start working together as a leader, as face of the franchise, and a new quarterback who has to learn the playbook and get to know his teammates and important building block opportunities OTAs and spring work provide. So we are, 15 days out from that date.
All right. To tag on to that, Derek Carr decided to retire over the weekend here, right? And that now leaves the Saints with really interesting situation at the quarterback position. They obviously drafted Tyler Shuck. They have Rattler, and who's the other kid over there?
Jake Haener.
Oh yeah, the how could I forget Jake Haener? It does make one wonder, could that potentially be a landing spot for Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, that was speculated from the moment news came down the pike of Derek Carr's injury being pretty serious and jeopardizing his 2025 season. Now, I guess the Saints are getting cap relief from Carr's retirement. You know this better than I do, Dave. Will that make it easier?
I believe there will be some cap relief. I haven't gone deep into the numbers, but I think the general narrative is there will be some cap relief there.
So that's like the only thing that's really changed. But, Kellen Moore did not rule out external options. He talked about it's going to be a true open competition for the starting job between Shuck and Haener and Rattler. I don't know. I just don't see the appeal. Why would Rodgers want to go to New Orleans over Pittsburgh when Pittsburgh, I think, is in a stronger position to win even post trading Pickens?
Okay, I'll push back on that. I think if I was Aaron Rodgers, I'd much rather go to the NFC South than I would the AFC North.
Do you think guys like Rodgers think about it in that sense? Aren't they hyper competitors to believe that they can win and they're not looking for the easy way out? That's not. I don't know if guys are wired like that.
I want the shortest path to least resistance.
No, I mean I get that. I mean you're not wrong, but I don't know if guys like Rodgers look at it that way. Don't they embrace the challenge and let's go shock the world? And no one has a bigger chip on their shoulder than Aaron Rodgers for sure, rightfully or not.
Then they draft a couple offensive linemen over there, and they still have Kamara. They have Olave. Who else do they have at wide receiver over there?
Yeah, the receiver room I don't think is very strong. Is Shaheed still there? He made some big plays last year. Got Juwan Johnson at tight end. Did he have an injury? I'm not Saints Depot, but I mean, I don't know. There's been no reporting connecting at least Rodgers and the Saints. Could it happen? Yeah, of course it could happen, but I assume it's still going to be Pittsburgh or bust.
They got Chris Olave, Brandon Cooks, Rashid Shaheed, Cedric Wilson Jr., and that's about the top of the draft chart. I mean, depth chart. They drafted
Taysom Hill. I got Taysom Hill.
Yeah, they got Taysom Hill. They got Kamara in the backfield. Do you really foresee the Saints potentially? I mean, look, Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener aren't the answers, right?
No, but they drafted Chuck in the second round. I
Right.
mean, you could sit him for a season. He is already 26 years old, but I think there's obviously they're pretty high on Tyler Shock.
Okay. We'll see how high they are. I mean, it just makes you wonder with Carr retiring. And look, you got a younger head coach over there in Kellen Moore. Maybe Aaron feels like could have a little bit more say over there too. I don't know.
Anything's possible. Is there any chance that Carr tries to unretire and play for somebody else? My first thought, and maybe I'm totally off base on this, was kind of to steal the McAfee term, kind of a fugazi whenever Carr retired, because it seemed like it was some tension with New Orleans. And I don't know. I just kind of, maybe I'm totally wrong
They
and
would
off
still
base.
own the rights to him and all like
Sure.
that and all. So I think this is just going to be too tough of an injury for Carr to overcome.
You think he's done, like truly done?
Yeah, I think he's done.
Okay. I know the report was that shoulder was degenerative, so that's never a good word to be associated with any health issue, especially for a quarterback's shoulder. So we'll see. Do you still? What are the odds? Give me a percentage odds of Aaron Rodgers becoming the Steelers' Week 1 quarterback or signing with Pittsburgh.
I mean, all signs still have to point as the Steelers in the driver's seat. I don't, the only thing that makes you kind of question is wondering if the Saints are going to reach out to him. I think, and might it come down to money, chance to win? I don't know, but I mean, all the reporting still, for the most part, is the expectation is that Aaron Rodgers. I guess the question becomes is what if Aaron Rodgers still has not made his any decision by the time OTAs start? Does that mean he's still looking at maybe outside Pittsburgh opportunities?
Well, I think regardless of what the reason is, does Pittsburgh start to show some impatience? Art Rooney has been the only one of the Steelers' kind of big three of Tomlin, Kahn, and Rooney to have any sort of kind of soft deadline or some hint that there is going to be a deadline at some point. He talked about that back in, I think, March when he said we're willing to wait a little while, but not forever. And then during the draft, he mentioned, to me, was basically implying that Rodgers needs to be there by the start of OTAs. Didn't explicitly say that, but said he would like to have him there for OTAs when this thing kind of gets cranked up in the offseason. So to me, that is the next line in the sand about what happens if there is no decision by then. And you have to think Rodgers would understand Pittsburgh's position of they're getting ready for their offseason work. And could we get an answer before the 27th?
Yeah.
I know we've spent the entire offseason asking every day, could this be the day? And it's not the day that we get the answer from Aaron Rodgers. But I predicted, and they're all worthless, obviously, that we would know an answer by the 27th, by the end of May. And I will stand by that.
All right. Like to get this put to bed, obviously.
Do you take any credence, any validation to the idea that Rodgers is waiting for the schedule to be released? I think it's the dumbest of the suggestions of why Rodgers has not made a decision yet.
Yeah, I don't think that matters in all this at all. At all.
Like the theory, and I think Colin Cowherd said it, and then of course Mike Florio adopted it because he's never met a conspiracy theory he didn't like when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, is that Rodgers doesn't want to have to play a bunch of primetime games, but Pittsburgh always gets a bunch of primetime games. They always get like at least 4 per year, and so whether you know what you're getting when you're signing with Pittsburgh, no matter what.
Yeah, because of the flexing rules anyway, you could end up going from 3 to 5 anyway.
Right.
So you have no control over that. So I think that's way too far out there.
So yeah, that to me is the dumbest story of a lot of competition for the dumbest Rodgers storyline of the year, but I think that's up there. And also because we live in also the dumbest timeline. And reportedly Aaron Rodgers has not joined a local Pittsburgh country club. That rumor was out there this weekend. Richie Walsh talked to the owner of the Pittsburgh Country Club and said that Rodgers has not joined. I guess you could sit there and put your tinfoil hat on and say maybe he's not going to tell the truth, but that has also just been out there. We wrote about that yesterday because it was a slow news day, and here we are.
All right. Like most
slow news day, but
yeah, like most listening, just ready to get all this put behind us.
Yeah, I should say slow news day we wrote it in the morning, and then a bunch of news broke in the afternoon. That kind of carried us through. All right, Dave, anything else? Any other late-breaking news? If not, we can get to some reader emails and close out today's show. And just a couple of quick notes here. No live stream tonight. We will not have one next Monday. We'll have to work around. We got something going on, a little depot outing, and hopefully everything on my end sounded okay. I have a new setup, new system today, so I think things sound okay. But if there are any weirdness with the audio, I apologize, and we'll get that corrected for next time.
You sound great here.
All
All
right.
right, let's get to some reader emails. Let's see. Devin Murphy, why can't we settle on a simplified version of the Pickens trade? The Steelers entered the offseason having decided they were moving on from Pickens no matter what. They spent a second on Metcalf and get a future third for Pickens. So is it as easy as that?
What was the original question that he asked?
Why
The first
can't
thing
we
he said?
settle on a simplified version of the Pickens trade? The Steelers entered the offseason having decided they were moving on from Pickens no matter what.
I mean, I've settled on that. I mean, yeah, the second round pick was for Metcalf. They got a future third for Pickens. Is there a dispute?
Nah, he wants to know if we can just frame it as easy as that.
I know some people, and maybe this is what the reader's getting at, have tried to have. We had this question, I think, for a Friday show. I want to say about, well, Metcalf. You got to look at it not as Metcalf and Pickens, but as long as Robert Woods can do more than Van Jefferson, or Roman Wilson could do more than Van Jefferson last year, and Metcalf is Pickens' replacement, trying to kind of spin it a little bit. That kind of I push back on that thought. That kind of gets too in the weeds for me. So yeah, I think the framing of the reader is accurate here.
I agree. Bob Cowley writes in, franchise quarterback is the title. Just found you guys a couple of months ago. It has been so great having someone that does actual analysis instead of vapid clickbait hot takes 24/7. Well, thank you for that, Bob.
Thank you.
I wonder if you would dive into the term franchise quarterback just a bit. It gets tossed around a lot, especially for the Steelers, considering their current lack. But as much as the term is used, it doesn't seem to have a clear meaning. It kind of seems like the famous Supreme Court definition of pornography from decades ago. You know it when you see it. I heard Mel Kiper talk a few months back about an analysis he had done on how many franchise quarterbacks had been taken in each round over a number of years, although I can't remember the specifics. Can't find any documentation of the analysis. I remember thinking his definition of franchise quarterback struck me as being a surprisingly low bar. He says, I asked my good buddy ChatGPT to propose a definition, and this was the response. A quarterback that met at least four of these six criteria: team longevity and starts, 50-plus starts and 4-plus seasons with one team, winning impact, meaning a 550-plus winning percentage, playoff appearances, 2-plus playoff appearances, passing production, 3,500 plus passing yards per season, 3+ seasons, efficiency, 90+ passer rating, blah, 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 team investment, signed extension, or a round one pick and early starter. What do you think of this definition? While it's somewhat more stringent than my recollection of Kuiper's, it still seems kind of pedestrian to me. Do you have your own objective definition, or is it just a term that means whatever a person wants it to mean? All right. He thanks us for the draft analysis last couple of months. He says, I could have done with less Sanders talk, but he understands what a focus around that was. Yeah, I guess that's a good question. What is a franchise quarterback in today's NFL? And I just think that I think it is more along the lines of the definitions in the eye of the beholder. Like to think of a franchise quarterback as one. I mean, look, was Kenny Pickett, when he was drafted, deemed deemed a potential franchise quarterback, correct?
Sure, he was he was hopefully the franchise quarterback. He was never deemed the franchise quarterback in the literal what have you done sense, but the intent was to make him a franchise quarterback, or for him to become a franchise quarterback.
I guess you got to start at when does a deemed franchise quarterback become a franchise quarterback, an actual franchise quarterback? And I think a lot of the things he lined out here, according to ChatGPT, I mean, I get where that's coming from. I'd like to think that it's one that, hey, you know who your starter is going to be, for the next several seasons. A guy that obviously probably top 10, top 12 in majority of the key analytical stat computations. A guy that's going to get you into the playoffs more times than not. I mean, what is a franchise quarterback, Alex? When can a player be deemed a franchise quarterback for an organization? Is Deshaun Watson the franchise quarterback for the Browns? Was he?
When they traded for him, that was the hope. But in terms of when do you actually become the proven version of it, I agreed with the reader's kind of end comment. It's a little more just case by case. And to me, it's a little more of a feeling than it is necessarily, okay, check these boxes and you become one. You should be somebody that is viewed as a long term option where your franchise is not side eyeing any other potential quarterback avenues and somebody that you feel can make you Super Bowl competitive, not necessarily favorites or truly win a Super Bowl, but somebody you believe that can put you in contention to win it all as a long term option is, in my loose definition, a franchise quarterback.
I mean, you got Justin Herbert. He's a franchise quarterback, right?
Yeah, I would say so. But I add this Super Bowl caveat because you can start for a while and are you truly a franchise quarterback? Like, was Andy Dalton a franchise quarterback? He started for a long time. They weren't looking for other quarterbacks, but was he truly a franchise guy? I wouldn't say that. Geno Smith is kind of in a similar boat. So that's why I kind of put the Super Bowl contender caveat. I think Herbert, you could argue, is putting the Chargers in that camp.
Drake May's not a franchise quarterback yet, right?
He's in that hopeful status. That's the intent, obviously, but he'll have to prove it some more for sure.
So, I mean, it's is this one of these? I like how he put this. Uh, is it the famous Supreme Court definition of pornography? You know it when you see it.
Yeah, right. And that I think went right. I remember that case correctly was about defining art versus porn, and that was I think the takeaway there. So again, I do think it is more a little bit of a feeling than it is just do X, Y, and Z and you become a franchise quarterback.
Still Pastor writes in my take and then a question. Steelers will bring in 2 wide receivers before did we already hit? No, I don't think we hit this.
I don't think so.
He says the Steelers will bring in 2 wide receivers before training camp. Number 1 is a Lazard type cheap pickup after AR signs. He has a history with AR and has an average plus, and he is an average plus wide receiver. He says, I believe Coach Smith may use him as a tight end type receiver in 12 and 13 sets, at least half of his snaps. Number 2 is someone like DJ Moore, first choice for Steel Pastor, or Michael Pittman, trade the draft pick from Pickens trade or a 4th or 5th. I would be, let me interrupt this here. I would be surprised if the Steelers were able to trade for Michael Pittman.
Any reason?
Didn't they just sign him to a deal and all like that? I just would be surprised if the Colts were willing to trade Michael Pittman at this point.
Okay, fair. I don't know his whole status and situation. Yeah, he did. March 11th, 2024, signed a 3-year deal. I guess in theory they could trade him, but I don't know if there's a big appetite to lose a piece when they're trying to figure out the quarterback situation and give guys like Richardson or Jones, whoever starts there, some tools. So, and then does the Bears want to trade DJ Moore? And I think that'll be a fun piece for Ben Johnson's offense. I mean, yeah, we're in the same boat as last year. We're just kind of shooting and aiming and pointing at every potential receiver name out there.
And then he says maybe worst case, Romeo Doubs or Gabe Davis if healthy. Gabe Davis has a visit with the 49ers, I think. It was reported this morning.
Oh, does he? I didn't even notice that.
I thought I saw one of the beat writers say Gabe's. Let me see if I can Google that real quick. I thought I saw somebody report that this morning.
Okay, yeah, I may have totally missed it. I'm checking now.
I thought I saw something on Twitter with 49ers and Gabe Davis. Let me see.
There is a 49ers guy. I don't know how reputable it is. He reported that yesterday, but I don't know. I don't believe this has been confirmed.
Okay. All right. Okay. So maybe that we don't have full clarity on that. Anyway, he goes, clearly Omar has a different approach than Colbert. He says, your take. He says his 53 wide receivers on the 53-man roster are Metcalf, Moore, Wilson, Austin, Lazard, and Skoranek.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know we discussed it, some of the options on Friday's show, and I'm sure we'll continue to do so. I'm just don't want to spend I just don't want to go down the path of like having to talk about 10 different receiver options they may or may not get throughout the offseason. I don't know. Lazard will will make sense if Rodgers signs. The Jets, I think, probably would have an appetite to trade him under the new regime there. I just hate the whole thing. Like, Aaron Rodgers just always brings in his guys, and it doesn't work the way that you think it will. So I don't know. I think they're going to evaluate their own during OTAs and go from there, and I'll go from there too.
I agree. James Constantino writes in, when you look at the potential quarterbacks in the 2026 draft class, it's pretty underwhelming at this point, especially considering Arch Manning probably won't enter the draft. He says, is it possible that the Steelers might be accumulating draft capital to trade for an established quarterback next offseason? Perhaps a guy in the last year of his contract, a Tua or Kyler Murray type. Thanks for being the Best Steelers podcast. James, I tell you, I mean, we're going to talk about quarterback and the Steelers quarterback situation for 2026 for quite some time here. And all I can say is just let's watch what happens with the 2026 draft class. Well, let's watch what happens with Arch Manning. Could they potentially, I mean, who even on the veteran side right now could potentially be an option for the Steelers? He mentions Tua or Kyler Murray. I mean, if those two guys end up falling out of grace, here we are back in that same, are we going to be having these same conversations?
Yes.
Are they going to be signing this veteran quarterback or what's this, I mean, it's a valid question that James Constantino puts out here, but I mean, we're not going to have a great answer for it for a while here.
Yeah, we're going to go through all this next year of being connected to every potential quarterback name, rookie, veteran. Otherwise, who knows? We'll take all that after the year. But to your point, if Tua falls out of favor in Miami, if Murray does in Arizona, does Pittsburgh want to jump on that and be like, okay, that's our guy that just gave up on? Unless those guys have great seasons and somehow become free agents, they probably wouldn't be. So I don't know. But the 26 class, it's unpredictable. I don't want to guarantee anything, but there's some other names beyond Arch Manning, who you're right, has a good chance to stay in school past 2026. But, Lenore Sellers and I like Klubnik from Clemson, interesting name. And, who knows who else emerges. There's always somebody that comes out of nowhere. Joe Burrow, Jackson Dart, etc. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We got some time.
Yep. Nathan Casey, we'll make this a final one. It's a good one. Where would Roman Wilson rank in this year's draft? He says, according to the pundits, this year's draft class was a bad year for wide receivers, whereas last year's draft was loaded. So if Roman Wilson had the exact same tape and was in this year's draft, where would he stack up against this year's crop of wide receivers? He says, I would assume he would have at least a third-round grade in this year's draft. So couldn't he be considered GP's drafted replacement this year? Wasn't it prudent for them to not reach in this year's draft knowing Roman was coming back from injury, especially since it was a deep running back draft, and then they got what some consider a top 50 player in Caleb Johnson? All right, so we're kind of loosely in your head, where would Roman Wilson have ranked in this year's draft class? I think easily probably a third round pick. I think you could probably foresee him maybe going mid to late second round based on what was around him.
I don't really have good criteria to try to answer that. I agree it would be no worse. He probably would get pushed up because the class last year was a whole lot better than the class this year. Do you like him more than Jack Beck from TCU, who went 58th overall, Dave? Would you take Beck or Roman Wilson pre-draft?
That's a good question.
It's kind of maybe the name to circle.
I've obviously gone deeper on Roman Wilson than I have Beck.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know a lot about Beck's game, but I know more about Roman Wilson. So I'd have to punt there overall because I haven't done a full analysis as much as I've done on Roman Wilson. I mean, but there are some shared characteristics there.
Right. That's kind of a starting point. So, yeah, I mean, it probably wouldn't be a dramatic difference. He's not going to be an early second round pick. Wilson wouldn't have been. But I think maybe would have gone a little bit higher than a year ago. That's a rough way to answer the question.
What do you think about, I guess, the notion that Nathan has here? I would assume he would have at least been a third round grade in this year's draft. So couldn't he be considered GP's drafted replacement?
Again, this kind of goes into if you do this 4D chess, and I just view it as you had Pickens and Metcalf, and now you're replacing Pickens. I think it's the cleanest, simplest, easiest, and best way to look at that. That's how I view these moves.
All right, and we had the long conversation about Roman, and we'll continue to see what this team does and how confident they are in the wide receiver room. Plain and simple.
Well, their actions will tell us a lot.
Yeah, we'll get more information as time goes on here. All right, that's all the questions that I have in the email machine here, Alex. Anything,
All
any
right.
late breaking news, anything that we missed here?
No, not seeing anything, but I do have a fun little, well, it's fun in a macabre kind of sense. Stat of the weird up. Pittsburgh, no matter who starts a quarterback this year, Rodgers, Rudolph, or somebody else, Pittsburgh will have gone 5 straight seasons with a new week 1 starter. That has never happened in franchise history before, Dave. And so setting records, it's been an offseason of change, no question about that. First time Pittsburgh's ever totally changed over and gotten rid of their leading passer, rusher, and receiver from the year before, replacing the over 8,000 snaps I mentioned. So a lot of change. Results have been mostly the same, which is kind of the most confounding part of it all. Pittsburgh's had a lot of change to their roster, and things really haven't changed record-wise, for better or for worse. But that is my article this morning. I listed every starting quarterback in week 1 since Pittsburgh put in the T formation back in your day, Dave, 1952. No, you're not that old, but interesting little look back at history there.
And it looks almost guaranteed to be a new week 1 starter in 2026 too.
Yep, looking like it'll be 6 straight years with a new week 1 starter, but we'll update the post for next year if that ends up coming true.
All right, let's see. We'll get out of here on that note and be back on Wednesday. Hopefully we'll be talking about signing bonuses for the undrafted guys. Who knows about Derrick Harmon? Schedule release on Wednesday. We won't have that, I don't think, by the time we run the show, but we should know the Ireland game, so we'll talk about that, whatever news comes out in between Steelers related. So in the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex and his new computer at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, great. SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button and follow the directions that way. So until Wednesday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.